The simplest and most important problem for any society is this: shall the individual determine his or her life, or shall a central authority determine the lives of the many? It seems so obvious when it is stated that way. These are two sides of the road. We cannot ride on both sides, only one. The individual men or women will determine their own lives, or their lives will be managed by an ordained central authority, a collective. Is it not simple enough for a child to see the better choice? How can we complain when we determine our own lives? Surely the destiny of the individual is to find his own path. Yet when our lives are managed by the collective, the challenges are impossible and overwhelming. How intelligent, just, and wise is today's central authority? Or tomorrow's? How do we keep the central authority from becoming corrupt, enchanted with its own power, and abusive to those they manage? How do we protect our property and wealth from the ever-growing force of the authority? How do we find our potential when we are not permitted to pursue it? How do we find meaning in life when we do not determine for ourselves but simply serve a collective agenda in which we may have no real voice and see no real meaning? How can the collective agenda be made perfect, right, and pure for a mass of unique individuals, none of whom share identical thoughts, needs, or feelings? How do we endure this loss of the humor, expression, and joy that is crushed from individuals to maintain service and loyalty to the collective? In what cabinet do we store our personal goals, dreams, drives, while we praise and serve the collective? How long will our true selves last in that cabinet? Or will they be lost and forgotten or become stale? How does the collective grant us remedy for what it disregards, our souls, our identity, as the collective denies and ignores our singular qualities and presumes us to be like all others under the collective? How do we punish the collective, the authority, the ruler, for seeing millions of different and very special people as objects, citizens, taxpayers, members, statistics, reducing sacred humanity with such profane insult? How do we resolve the hypocrisy of a system that allows disloyalty to one's calling, but does not allow disloyalty to the collective? We must realize that none of us have ever met a fully self-determined human being, one who has never been told to jump when a bell rings, one who has never been bound by 1,000 regulations, laws, codes, and arbitrary social dictates. We have never seen a person who was fully determined, free to create, explore, and be inspired, and thus be able to inspire others. We have not seen this because we are agents of the collective. We impose the collective on each other. Those who are self-determined are a threat to authority, a threat to order, a threat to the enforcers, the rule makers, the managers. We are frightened by self-determined people, the people who are most likely to find and show us a better way, the people who are most likely to discover truth and to see the world as it really is. They scare us because they don't follow rules. We are told that people who don't follow rules are dangerous criminals. But then we crave our entertainment when we can see actors who do not follow rules, stories which do not follow rules, art which does not follow rules. So as we crave to see the rules broken for entertainment, we're frightened to see any rule broken in our real lives. In our real lives, all rules must be followed. We make no distinction between good rules and bad rules. If you don't follow every rule, you're dangerous. There's no such thing as a bad rule. Well, rules are not made to control your behavior. Rules are made to see if you are willing to control your own behavior. If the rule says to cut off your finger, it is not to make people have less fingers. It is to make clear evidence of who will obey the rule, so we can take the people who have all their fingers and put them in prison, because we can see that if you have all your fingers, you do not follow the rules. I make a rule that you don't want to follow, just to see if you will obey. As your ruler, I must know who will obey, who will put aside their own needs and desires and obey me. When people do not follow the rules, when they're self-determined, things are not orderly. But we need orderliness, don't we? We love things to be orderly. We are willing to control each other, even be controlled ourselves, in order to have order. So we let people make rules, good rules, bad rules, more rules every day, more rules than we can follow or remember. But when we let people make rules, we don't seem to have a way to make them stop. But even still, when we face those two choices, we choose the collective, not self-determination. We pick order over disorder. We don't realize, especially early on, that order will turn into a suffocating prison of behavioral control, theft of our wealth and property, slavish service to selfish agendas imposed by rulers for their own benefit. Tyranny, misery, hopelessness, mass murder. We choose that when we choose the collective over self-determination. Individuals can murder each other, but a collective can murder everyone. Every collective degenerates in that way. Any power granted is always used to collect more power. Self-determination always diminishes as power evolves and collects. To persuade us of the value of the collective, they tell us they will do the best things for the group. So we pick the collective. And by picking collectivism, we make genocide not only possible, but probable. How do you know when a collective is mature? You see genocide. What does it mean when you see genocide? It means your collective is mature. For humanity to ascend, you might say to grow up, we will each have to choose self-determination without fear of disorder. We will have to refuse and disallow collectives. We will have to tolerate no rulers. We will have to learn to cooperate in voluntary ways, not by force and violence. That is the higher state of being, of humanity, to find ways to organize ourselves without the use of violence and force, and without the objectification of individual human beings to the gross level of statistical units in a collective. There is no such thing as a little bit of collective. Collectives grow like cancers and turn people into numbers which can simply be added and subtracted. We can have a collective with a dehumanized mass of servants and followers, or we can have self-determination, human dignity, and unlimited creative potential where freedom and individual responsibility are not only valued, they are seen as the only way to get from here to peace, prosperity, and justice. If we do not insist on self-determination, we create a void, and a greedy collective occupies that void. Human nature causes collectives to rise by default. If we do nothing, we invite others to abuse and exploit us. That seems to be the pattern of history. The people do nothing, the tyrants take all the marbles. If any group of people will ever be self-determined, free, and prosperous, each person in that group will have to consciously and deliberately choose to determine their own lives and oppose the collective in all its forms and mechanisms.